Every time you look at something, reality doesn't just sit there waiting for you. It changes, it collapses. Every single time you observe, the universe is forced to choose. And scientists, they hate this idea, truly hate it. You can see it on their faces the moment you mention it. They get uncomfortable, they deflect. They pivot to dense equations, abstract models, anything to avoid the uncomfortable truth staring them straight in the eyes. Because admitting this one thing would shake the very foundation of how they understand the universe. Here, that's what they won't openly say. What they can't say without pulling the rug out from under their entire worldview. Consciousness doesn't merely watch reality unfold. Consciousness participates, it decides, it creates. Now you've heard versions of this before, haven't you? Law of attraction, manifestation, quantum jumping. Your thoughts create your reality. And maybe you believed it, maybe you tried. You visualized outcomes, you repeated affirmations. You tried to align your energy, tune your vibration, get into the right frequency. And sometimes it worked. A parking spot opened up right when you needed it. Money appeared from an unexpected place. A door opened. An opportunity landed in your lap. But then there were the other times, the long silences. Nothing happened, no response, no sign, just emptiness. And you were left asking the question nobody seems able to answer honestly. If consciousness really creates reality, why can't I control what I create? Here's the thing, there's a missing piece. A crucial one, and it's been hiding in plain sight this entire time, not buried in self-help books, not tucked away in spiritual teachings. It's been sitting in physics textbooks for nearly 100 years, and it revolves around a cat, a very famous cat. A cat that is both dead and alive at the same time, not dying, not sick. Fully alive and completely dead simultaneously, Schrödinger's cat. Most people think this is just a clever thought experiment, a quirky paradox, a nerdy physics joke. But what if I told you this single paradox explains exactly why your manifestations sometimes work, and sometimes completely fail? What if I told you Nobel Prize? Winning physicists have openly speculated that human consciousness may literally reach out and collapse physical reality itself. And what if I told you scientists become deeply uncomfortable with this idea, because its implications are too radical to accept? Stay with me, because over the next stretch of time, I'm going to show you why you're not just watching your life unfold. You're actively collapsing it into existence. And why the physics community has been quietly avoiding this implication for almost a century. Ready to go deeper? Let's dive in. Here is how the thought experiment works, and trust me when I say this. Understanding this setup is absolutely essential for everything that follows. An atom moves toward a semi-transparent mirror. When it reaches the mirror, it splits. Half of its probability goes into box A, the other half goes into box B. Standard quantum mechanics so far. Nothing controversial yet. But now comes the strange part. Box A contains 3 objects, a Geiger counter, a bottle of cyanide sealed with a cork, and a cat. A perfectly healthy, fully alive, breathing cat. If the atom enters box A, the Geiger counter clicks. The cork pops. Cyanide is released. The cat dies. If the atom goes into box B, nothing happens. The cat lives, simple, alive or dead. One or the other. Except quantum mechanics refuses to play by common sense. Before observation, the atom doesn't choose box A or box B, it occupies both simultaneously. It exists in what's called superposition, a state of being in multiple possibilities at once. And if the atom is in both boxes at the same time, then the Geiger counter has both fired and not fired. The cork is both pulled and untouched. The poison is both released and contained. And the cat is both dead and alive at the same exact moment. Not half dead, not dying. Not in some fuzzy middle ground. A fully thriving living cat and a completely dead cat existing simultaneously. As Schrödinger himself put it, the entire system contains equal parts living and dead cat. Pause on that. Let it really sink in, because this isn't just strange, it's outrageous. It violates everything you think you know about reality. And here's the part almost no one mentions. Schrödinger agreed it was ridiculous. He created this experiment specifically to show how absurd quantum mechanics becomes when you apply it to everyday objects. Schrödinger was responding to a colleague who insisted that particles don't have definite physical properties until they're observed. Schrödinger pushed back hard. "So you're telling me," he said, "that my act of looking creates the atom's position?" His colleague doubled down. "Yes, observation collapses the wave function." And Schrödinger followed that logic to its brutal conclusion. A cat is just a collection of atoms. A table is just atoms. A human being is just atoms. If atoms don't have reality until observed, then collections of atoms don't either. Which means the cat doesn't exist in any definite state until someone opens the box and looks. The Copenhagen interpretation, the dominant framework in quantum physics, tries to escape this by drawing a line. Quantum rules for tiny things, classical rules for big things. Somewhere, somehow, there's a boundary, but Schrödinger called this a cop-out. Nature has no such boundary. Either quantum mechanics applies to everything or it doesn't. And if it applies universally, then cats, like atoms, must obey quantum rules, which leads to an absurd conclusion. Therefore, Schrödinger argued quantum mechanics must be incomplete. Something is missing, and this is where it gets personal, because you are made of atoms, your body, your brain, your thoughts, your awareness, all quantum systems. If a cat can exist in superposition, what about you? Are multiple versions of you existing right now, collapsed into one only when observed? Do you even exist when no one is looking? Uncomfortable questions, big ones, questions that feel too philosophical to take seriously, except they're no longer theoretical. Scientists have been pushing the boundary further and further, testing larger and larger systems in superposition, and the results are shocking. In Austria, Anton Zeilinger placed molecules containing 70 carbon atoms into 2 locations at once. Not symbolically, literally, same molecule, 2 places, next came proteins, then viruses. When asked what the upper limit is, scientists admit the only barrier is funding. In 2003, researchers announced they'd placed 3,600 atoms into superposition. The boundary between quantum weirdness and everyday reality is dissolving, which brings us back to the cat, back to you, back to the question that refuses to disappear. If observation collapses reality, then who or what is the observer? This is where most people oversimplify it. I observe, therefore I create my reality. End of story, except it's not that simple. Because what about everyone else? What about the cat itself? Can the cat observe the Geiger counter? Does the cat's awareness collapse its own wave function? What about insects, bacteria? Security cameras? Where is the line? Nobel Prize-winning physicist Eugene Wigner asked the same question, and his answer was explosive. He suggested that human consciousness itself might be the thing that collapses the wave function. That awareness is not passive, it's active, creative. And that collapse happens at the very final stage of observation. Not at the detector, not at the photons hitting your eyes, but at the moment conscious awareness registers the event. Let that land. Because if that's true, consciousness is what turns possibility into actuality. So ask yourself, who qualifies as an observer? In the cat experiment, we assume the wave collapses when you open the box, alive or dead. But what if the cat already observed the outcome? The instant the counter clicks or doesn't click, wouldn't the cat know? Wouldn't that awareness collapse the wave function immediately? Or does observation require self-awareness, reflection? Metacognition, nobody knows, and that drives physicists insane, because physics demands precision, objectivity, clarity. Consciousness offers none of those. Wigner took this problem so seriously that he proposed an even more extreme experiment. Instead of a cat, put a human in the box, a conscious observer. If the Geiger counter clicks, the person writes an X on a piece of paper. From inside the box, reality collapses immediately. But from outside, that person is part of the quantum system. Until Wigner opens the box, the observer inside exists in superposition, having written X and not written X simultaneously. 2 observers, 2 realities. Wigner's conclusion was radical. Human consciousness collapses the wave function at the moment of awareness, not earlier. Awareness creates reality, and here's the unsettling implication. The only consciousness you are absolutely certain of is your own. Everyone else could be in unresolved states until your attention collapses them into definite forms. This idea is called solipsism. And when quantum mechanics is taken to its logical extreme, it starts to look disturbingly plausible. I know how this sounds. Egotistical, insane, narcissistic, but this isn't mysticism. This isn't spiritual fantasy. This is where the mathematics leads if you refuse to look away. And most physicists do look away. They dismiss consciousness entirely. Stephen Hawking famously said he wanted the conversation ended the moment Schrödinger's cat came up. Why such hostility? Because acknowledging consciousness as fundamental threatens the materialist foundation of modern physics. The belief that matter is primary and consciousness is secondary. But what if it's reversed? What if consciousness is fundamental and matter emerges when it observes? Before you dismiss this, consider something experimentally verified, the delayed choice experiment. John Wheeler designed it to test whether observation determines not just the present, but the past. Imagine opening the box 8 hours later. The cat is alive. Evidence shows it lived the entire time. Open it and the cat is dead. Evidence shows it died 8 hours ago. Your observation now determines the history then. Wheeler confirmed this experimentally. Observation retroactively creates reality's timeline. So here's the connection to your life. If awareness collapses possibility into fact, if consciousness authors reality, then you aren't watching your story. You're writing it moment by moment. But here's the twist. You cannot create from wanting. Wanting implies absence. Needing collapses a reality of lack. The wave function responds to certainty, not desire. You must observe from the state of already having. Already being, already living the outcome, not to trick the universe, but because that's how collapse works. The moment you stop needing reality to change, you gain the power to collapse it into something new. Because wholeness, not lack, is what brings coherence, and coherence is what collapses the wave. And this is exactly where most physicists slam on the brakes. They argue the cat paradox is irrelevant. That macroscopic systems can't be isolated from their environment. The wave function collapses long before any human ever opens the box. And technically, yes, this is where mainstream physicists are correct. Let me explain why that argument exists, and then I'll show you exactly why it doesn't actually solve the problem. It only hides it. Any macroscopic object like a cat is never isolated. It's constantly interacting with its surroundings. The cat emits photons. Those photons bounce off the walls of the box. In that sense, the box is already observing the cat. But it goes deeper than that. The cat has mass, and because it has mass, gravity interacts with it. The moon's gravitational pull on a standing, breathing cat is measurably different from its pull on a lifeless body lying on the floor. That means the cat is gravitationally entangled with the moon, with the tides, with the entire universe. This entanglement doesn't take minutes or seconds. One physicist calculated it happens in a fraction of a millionth of a second. Almost instantly, the cat's wave function becomes completely entangled with everything else. And in modern physics, entanglement is treated as observation. Entanglement equals collapse. From this perspective, the cat is never truly in superposition. It's alive or dead the moment the atom does or does not enter the box. End of discussion. Same with the Geiger counter. It's already a macroscopic object. The instant the atom interacts with it, the wave function collapses. No human consciousness required. This is the mainstream view, the Copenhagen interpretation. And it sounds like this. Science exists to predict the outcomes of observations, not to describe ultimate reality, not to speculate about what happens when no one is watching. Quantum mechanics tells us we'll find the cat alive half the time and dead half the time. That's all it promises. That's all it needs to promise. Consciousness is irrelevant. Schrödinger's cat is misleading. The entire debate is pointless. Stephen Hawking wasn't exaggerating when he said he wanted the conversation shut down immediately. But here's what they don't tell you. Here's the detail they quietly gloss over. The entanglement explanation doesn't actually solve the problem. It just moves it one step back. Yes, the cat entangles with the box. The box entangles with the room entangles with the planet entangles with the moon entangles with the galaxy. Fine, but then what? At what point does the entire system collapse into a single, definite state? When does the universe itself stop being a superposition of possibilities and become one concrete outcome? The Copenhagen interpretation refuses to answer this. It can't answer it, because answering it would require defining what observation actually is. And that's the question they don't want to touch. And this is where cracks start forming in the mainstream position, because experiments keep pushing quantum behavior into larger and larger systems, not just atoms, not just simple molecules. Systems containing thousands of atoms, systems approaching the scale where classical physics is supposed to take over. Anton Zeilinger, Nobel Prize winner in physics in 2022, has been leading this charge. He placed molecules made of 70 carbon atoms into 2 locations at the same time, buckyballs. Large, complex structures exhibiting undeniable quantum behavior. When asked where the limit is, his answer was blunt: only our budget. Meaning there may be no boundary at all between the quantum and classical worlds. In 2007, Physical Review Letters published a paper stating that the race to observe quantum behavior in human-made nanoelectromechanical systems is bringing us closer than ever to testing the very foundations of quantum mechanics. Translation: we're dangerously close to seeing macroscopic quantum effects that should not exist if the standard interpretation is correct. Thousands of atoms in superposition. Billions of electrons flowing simultaneously in opposite directions. Bose-Einstein condensates spread across measurable distances. This isn't obscure theoretical math anymore. This is engineered reality, observed reality, and every time that boundary gets pushed, the consciousness problem becomes harder to ignore. Because if a 70-atom molecule can exist in 2 places at once, what about a virus, a bacterium, a microscopic organism with primitive awareness? Where does observation actually occur? Where does collapse truly happen? The materialist answer, it's just decoherence, just entanglement, starts to sound less like an explanation and more like an excuse to avoid the real question. And then there's the delayed choice experiment, the one that refuses to stay quiet. The experiment that demonstrates something deeply unsettling. Observation doesn't just create the present, it creates the past. John Wheeler predicted that you could decide how to measure a particle after it has already passed through an experimental setup, and that your choice would determine how the particle behaved in the past. And this prediction has been confirmed, repeatedly, in multiple labs with different configurations. The photon doesn't decide whether it traveled as a wave or a particle until you decide how to observe it, even if that decision happens after the photon has already passed through the apparatus. Your future observation determines its past behavior. If that doesn't disrupt your understanding of time and causality, you're not really paying attention. This isn't philosophy. This isn't mysticism. This is peer-reviewed, experimentally verified physics, and it strongly suggests, uncomfortably suggests, that consciousness plays a role in wave function collapse. Not just any consciousness, yours. The awareness reading these words right now, because delayed choice experiments don't run themselves. The equipment doesn't choose, you choose. And your choice reaches backward through time to determine what happened. Most physicists get visibly uneasy when you point this out. They retreat to equations, predictions, technical language. Consciousness makes them uncomfortable because it's subjective, messy, impossible to quantify. But the data doesn't care. Reality doesn't care. The experiments keep showing the same thing. The observer cannot be separated from the observed. And here's the most radical implication, the one that directly connects to your manifestation practice. If observation creates reality, and if observation can reach backward in time, then your present state of consciousness is actively creating your past. Not just your future, your past. The timeline you remember is being collapsed by your awareness right now. Which means changing how you observe changes your history, not the raw facts, but the meaning, the emotional weight, the identity shaped by those events. This is why healing works. Why reframing works. Why perception shifts create real changes. You're not reinterpreting a fixed past. You're collapsing a different past into existence, and the quantum field allows this. Because at the quantum level, time does not behave the way you were taught it does. So let's strip this down. Forget the equations, forget the jargon. What's actually at stake here? 3 fundamental questions. First, does reality exist independently of observation, or is reality participatory, requiring consciousness to turn possibility into actuality? Second, is consciousness an accidental byproduct of matter, or is it a fundamental feature of the universe, as essential as space and time? Third, what are the limits of science itself? Is physics only meant to predict outcomes, or should it attempt to describe what's really happening when nobody is looking? Schrödinger and Einstein stood firmly on one side. They believed science should pursue underlying reality, not hide behind measurement. The Copenhagen camp stood on the other, declaring questions of ultimate reality meaningless. Schrödinger called that stance defeatist, a surrender of science's deepest purpose. And this isn't just an academic argument, it affects you. If materialism is correct, then you're a passive observer in a predetermined universe. Your thoughts don't create. Your awareness doesn't matter. You're just along for the ride. But if Schrödinger, Einstein, and Wigner were right, if consciousness collapses the wave function, then you are an active participant in reality creation. Your observation matters, literally. And the scientific world is slowly shifting, reluctantly. In 2000, Physics Today published a cartoon about Schrödinger's cat, noting it wouldn't have been acceptable decades earlier. Textbooks now display a living cat on the front cover and a dead one on the back. Conferences on quantum consciousness happen regularly. The taboo is breaking. Why? Because the experiments won't stop. Reality refuses to behave like a dead, unconscious machine. John Wheeler captured it perfectly. Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known. And that somewhere is right here, in the interaction between awareness and reality. So let's bring this home. If consciousness creates reality, why can't you control what you manifest? Here's the answer. You are controlling it constantly. You're just collapsing from the state you're already in. When you want money, you collapse a reality of not having money. When you need love, you observe from lack. When you try to manifest health, you affirm illness. The quantum field doesn't respond to desire, it responds to observation. Wanting prolongs superposition, needing delays collapse. Certainty collapses the wave. You must observe as if it already exists, not hoping, not believing, observing, because observation finalizes reality. You've always been collapsing your reality. The only question is, which one? Because delayed choice proves this. Your observation now creates your present and your past. Your story isn't fixed. Your timeline isn't locked. It's being collapsed moment by how you observe it. So I'll leave you with this question, the only one that really matters. What reality are you collapsing right now? This is Observer Effect number 19. And if you think this was intense, wait until episode 20, because Einstein himself tried to destroy everything you just heard. Are you ready?